Hey, everybody listening and watching this. Just wanted to say happy Monday. Hope things are starting out fairly well for you, if not great, if not better than that. Or um, for some of us, it might be a tougher week, tougher start, whatever it is. Glad that you're tuning into this video, seeing if there's something here that's going to be relevant as far as helping you, whether immediately or in the long term. Again, just want to introduce myself. My name is Josh. If this is your first time watching any of my videos that I've made up to this point, my purpose here is to, help others possibly see things different, whether it's your outlook on life, your worldview, wondering why you're struggling to get from the place you're in at the moment to something that you consider to be further up the road, something that means advancement, or even if it's just to spark interest in something or perhaps give you some food for thought. Not really too sure what you'd like to make of anything that I've shared, but you're open to it. And again, this is for anybody that wants to just see what I might be saying or sharing that could possibly be helpful for them in their journey. And again, I'm not an expert in any sense of the word. Somebody who has some life experience, somebody who has been, gone through formal education as well as that real life education, right? That stuff that you can't learn in books. And so, just here to offer what I consider to be fairly practical. I don't think there's anything, concepts, ideas that you're going to hear that are particularly original, other than the fact that they're coming from someone like myself. Um, these are things that I've thought or things that have been helpful to me, and so I'm sharing. And my last video actually touched on uh, what we call the law of the harvest. Essentially, this is something that is used to describe, first and foremost, the process of planting and growing crops or anything that's planted in the ground. That initial sowing, that initial planting, and then there's the steps in between: watering, caring, the time element, right, waiting, and then of course the growth, whatever comes out of the ground. So whatever was planted is coming up, whatever was sowed is being reaped. And so talked about that again. That was inspired from a line that I got from one of my favorite books that I'm often mentioning here, which is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And anyway, I just really was fascinated with that line, specifically just the idea that there's a process, right? Reaping and sowing, right? You reap what you sow. The law of the harvest always governs. That's what the line says, right? Just to paraphrase, like, regardless, whatever you're putting into it, right? Whatever you're sowing, whatever you're planting, that's what you're going to reap. That's what's going to come about. Um, and so just kind of wanted to expand a little bit more on that. Again, please feel free to refer to last week's video if you need more context, or just want to kind of see if there's anything there that would help you maybe understand a little bit more what I'm talking about today. But again, there's a process there that cannot be, um, you can't, there's no way to shortcut it, right? And again, that's why it's a law. That's why it's, solid. And I found that to be interesting because it's like, let's say I plant something, right? And I have the end in mind, right? And we can reference this to things that we've tried, or maybe we're in a season right now where we're wanting to just kind of put our feelers out, see if there's something else that we can pursue, whether it's a lifestyle change, or whether it's career wise, whatever it might be. And so you're focusing, right? You're doing your part, okay? If you're trying to get ahead in your career, maybe you're applying different places. Maybe you're, kind of messing with your resume, trying to, experiment with different ways to, express your background, or maybe you're trying to lifestyle change. So you're taking small steps right in the right direction. Basically, you're putting forth an effort now to go a different direction. So this is what you're sowing, right? This is what we're putting into it. Okay, you could be decide that you're going to write more, decide that you're going to just, whatever it is that you might be pursuing. And maybe you're just trying to get better at what it is that you're doing in the moment, whatever it might be. You're putting forth an effort, right? So that's that initial step, that first step. Again, that sowing, literally it applies to, agriculture, it applies to seeds and growth. But figuratively, we can put this anywhere. Okay. Now we move forward, we take that first step, call it the sowing stage, call it the planting stage, whatever you want to call it. And now we're doing what we can essentially to water it, right? So the first thing you're going to do with the seeds, you want to make sure they're watered. You want to make sure they're in sunlight, right? That's how we're going to get the best results. And so, again, figuratively applying this elsewhere in your life, what does that watering look like, right? What does that process look like? And so you begin to do that. And then again, there's the time element. And I mentioned this in the last video, that waiting period. Right? We can't speed up time. There's no fast forward button. And so we can prepare, we can be as purposeful, as meaningful, as intentional as we want, but the process is going to take its time, right? I mean, crops, they have a certain amount of time before the seed will sprout and become something, and it starts to come to the ground, then it becomes the end product. And that's what I wanted to touch on. So now let's say we've entered that sowing stage, right? We're planting, we're putting effort, whatever it might be. Again, wherever you want to apply this. Now we're watering, right? We're trying to make sure that this is going to have the best, we're going to give it the best chance possible. So we're giving our all. We're making sure that we set whatever it is that we planted, whatever we want to see come forth from this sowing and this planting, we're making sure we're giving it the best chance possible. So we're watering it, again, figuratively, whatever that looks like. Now we get to the reaping. Now let's say the time's gone by. Again, can't speed it up, but it does pass. We get to the end. Now it's time to reap what we've sown. And this is the part that I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit more today, is oftentimes what the part that's going to mess us up is that when we do end up reaping what we've sown, sometimes it's not what we were expecting, okay? And I wanted to touch on that concept of expectations, that idea of expectation in this process. So we're sowing, we're taking care of it, we're watering, we know, we see the end in mind, we know what we want to get out of this, and then it comes out of the ground, and then it's time to reap, and it's not what we wanted, or it's not what we expected. And those expectations, those things can be a hindrance to us repeating the process. Because remember, as I mentioned last week, it's the law of the harvest that we will always reap what we sow. And you can't shortcut this process. You can't circumvent this process. The only way to get those same results, right? The only way to reap what you sow is to go back to that sowing stage, care for it, wait, reap what you sow. You've got to do the process again. And a lot of times, like I said, expectations will discourage us from wanting to do that process over again. But this is where we have to learn how to be realistic with expectations, number one. And if you have any ideas as far as, things that work for you to be realistic with your expectations. Now, here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying don't dream big. I'm not saying don't have big ideas. I'm not saying, don't, try to achieve something that you feel is beyond yourself. I'm not saying that at all. Absolutely do those things. Absolutely pursue those things. Absolutely desire to be the most excellent version of yourself. Absolutely. I'm never going to discourage that. I think that's a great way to, to take hold of this adventure that we call life. I think that's a great outlook. But expectations have to be realistic. Meaning you have to understand that no matter what type of effort you put into this, even if you mean with all your intention that you're going to give yourself the best outcome possible, the outcome might not always be what you expected. So we've got to prepare ourselves for that. We've got to prepare ourselves for the fact that, whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve, right? Whatever it is I'm trying to move forward with, right? Let's say you went to college and you got a degree, and then you got another degree, and you have some professional goals that you want to achieve. Now you've come this far. You've put in the hard work. You've put in the study time. You've put in the sacrifice, right? And now you're applying yourself. And maybe up to this point, you would have expected to be a little bit further along in your professional career, or maybe at this point you would have expected yourself to think different or to see things different. After you spent so much time, trying to fix your outlook on life and adjust how you see the world, and maybe just take yourself out of a negative mindset that seems to always just take hold of you, and maybe you've tried really hard, you've gone to therapy, you've put in the work, whatever it might be, you're sowing, you're watering, and you're just not getting the results that you want. And so those expectations start to get frustrating, and even to the point where we think, well, I've got these expectations, I'm putting in the work, I'm doing what I got to do, I'm not getting the results that I want. And I'm here to say this: there's a ton of ways that you can work through this, okay? And like I said, if you can comment on some things that help you just kind of get realistic with your expectations. But the one thing that I think is helpful to me is not to not have expectations, right? Because I feel like that's a form of self-defense. It puts us in a defensive mode. We don't want to be hurt by the letdown. We don't want to be disappointed again. And I understand these are things that are hard to deal with. These are hard emotions, especially when it's stuff you can't control. But I don't think the answer is to do away with expectations. I think it's to make them realistic. And I think it's to prepare ourselves for outcomes and results that might not be ideal. And there's two ways that you can do that. And there's more than two ways, but there's two ways that I'm going to mention here. Number one, you can expect that whatever happens, you're going to be determined to learn from that. Okay? I made a short this week about, setbacks, how it's more important, the lesson that you learn is more important than the setback itself. Well, the same thing can be applied to, reaping what you sow, and that reaping not being what you wanted it to be. But before the process even happens, before you even get to that final stage, prepare your mind, prepare your outlook to say, hey, you know what? Regardless of what happens, I'm going to learn from it. And by learning from it, it means that you're bettering yourself. Okay? It might not be the results that you wanted, but by being determined to learn, no matter what the results, that's going to help you. Okay? The second thing is you have to believe that regardless, right? Promise yourself, whatever you have to tell yourself. If you have to promise yourself before the start of you're back at the sowing stage, you're trying over again. If you have to tell yourself that no matter what happens, okay, two things. Not only am I going to learn from it, the second thing is it's not going to keep me from doing this process again. Like I said before, expectations can deter us. They can frustrate us. They can keep us, from trying again, right? Because we don't want to have to deal with that. We don't want to think about, putting in everything that we got, watering, making sure we give it the best results, and we still don't get what we've expected from it. Okay, we don't want to have to deal with that again. But we've got to get it in our mind. We've got to allow that to sink in. Like, hey, no matter what happens, no matter what the outcome, I'm gonna learn from it. Okay, so I'm gonna get better. And number two, I'm not gonna let it deter me from trying again, starting over again, going through the process again, sowing, waiting, reaping, sowing, waiting, reaping. Again, you can't get around that. So expectations, that's what I wanted to focus on. How those things can get us, how they can make us more fearful of trying again, and what we need to do to make sure that that doesn't happen. Okay? Because we can't control the outcomes. We can't control every single thing. All we can do is be determined to go through the process. That's the only thing we can really control. So we can't let expectations drag us down if it's not what we were asking for. And again, these are things that I'm looking to expand on. Any comments, anything that can be shared in the comment section about anything I mentioned today, how you deal with expectations. Is this something that you struggle with? Is this something that you are constantly battling against? Is this something that you feel like you've got a leg up on, right? Maybe you feel like, hey, I've figured out a system where these things don't even affect me, or they affect me very little. I'd love to hear about that as well. Anyway, thank you for your time. Appreciate everybody that's tuned in, and I will see you next week.